A billionaire froze to death inside a locked, perfectly heated luxury train cabin. And the murder weapon was literally the public Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I know it sounds like the punchline to a very dark, very modern joke. But the case file we're opening today,
Yeah.
it really represents a fundamental paradigm shift in how we need to think about physical security.
Welcome to the deep dive. We are looking at a case file officially designated as the Chrome Heart. And our mission today is to unpack a completely impossible crime scene, figure out the ruthless corporate espionage that triggered it, and ultimately understand what the mechanics of this assassination mean for the smart devices surrounding you, like the listener, right at this very second.
Right, exactly. We were talking about the collision of golden age locked room mysteries and, well, 21st century cyber warfare.
And we're not dealing in theoreticals here, right?
No, absolutely not. The vulnerabilities exploited in this case, they're built into the architecture of the connected world we all live in right now.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's set the stage. The location is the Polaris Express. This is a newly minted, state-of-the-art luxury train on its maiden voyage.
Yeah, it's highly exclusive.
Very. It is specifically designed to run through the most hostile sub-zero mountain passes in Scandinavia while keeping its ultra-wealthy passengers insulated in complete comfort. We are talking velvet armchairs, amber lighting, absolute luxury.
And the most high-profile guest on board is a man named Sterling Croft.
Right. And Croft is an incredibly polarizing figure. He's a tech magnate, but his empire wasn't built on, search algorithms or social media or anything like that.
No, he dominated the high-stakes, highly unregulated frontier of advanced biomedical implants.
The guy didn't just want market share. He wanted to own the proprietary hardware operating inside his consumers' bodies, which is just wild to think about.
It is. And he had a reputation for being ruthless, highly litigious, and entirely driven by profit margins.
Which makes his N on the Polaris Express feel incredibly loaded. So let's look at the facts of the crime scene, because initially they make absolutely no sense.
They really don't.
It's 3 a.m. VIP Cabin 1. Suddenly, an alarm triggers.
And we need to be specific about the nature of this alarm. It isn't a smoke detector. It isn't like an intruder alert on the door.
Right.
It is a biometric alarm broadcasting directly from Croft's personal devices. His own vitals are screaming that he is in catastrophic distress.
So the train security team scrambles. They get to cabin 1, but the door is completely sealed. This is a heavy, soundproof door with a state-of-the-art digital lock.
Yeah, there's no physical keyhole at all.
Exactly. It requires a biometric scan to open, so security has to authorize a master system override just to force the locking mechanism to disengage.
Which takes time.
It does. They finally burst in, and they find Sterling Croft dead in his bed, completely unequivocally frozen solid.
The autopsy photographs and the initial reports are just jarring. His skin had taken on a deep cyanotic blue hue.
Ew.
Yeah. The ambient moisture in the room had actually sublimated and formed visible frost and ice crystals on his eyelashes and even on the fabric of his collar.
That's terrifying.
It presents as terminal, late-stage hypothermia, like the kind of tissue damage you would see if a mountaineer had been lost in a glacial crevasse for 48 hours.
Okay, my first thought when reading this was that someone tampered with the HVAC. Like, did someone pump Freon or liquid coolant through the cabin's ventilation shafts? Or maybe they smuggled in dry ice?
The investigative team had the exact same hypothesis.
Yeah.
You always look for the environmental anomaly first.
Right, that makes sense.
But when they pulled the system logs for the train's climate control, the data completely contradicted that theory.
Right. The thermostat in VIP Cabin 1 was functioning flawlessly. It was set to 72 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
And the chief engineer of the Polaris Express testified under oath that the heating coil for that specific cabin never dropped a single fraction of a degree. The room was perfectly warm.
There was also physical, localized evidence corroborating those digital logs. A cup of Earl Grey tea sitting on the nightstand next to the bed was still steaming when the security team breached the room.
That detail is what messes with my head. A completely frozen body next to a hot cup of tea. It is a paradox.
It really is.
If the environment is warm and the room is sealed from the inside, the cold couldn't have come from the outside environment.
By sheer process of elimination, the fatal drop in temperature had to originate from within the victim himself.
Wait, what?
Yeah. The assailant didn't alter the room. They found a mechanism to freeze Croft's circulatory system from the inside out.
And they did it fast. Let's look at the timeline. Croft didn't travel light when it came to security. He had a personal bodyguard stationed in the corridor right outside that heavy digital door.
And that guard's testimony is really the only window we have into the events leading up to the 3.0 AM alarm.
So the guard confirmed that nobody approached the door. However, he did report two distinct anomalies during his watch.
The first happens at exactly 2:45 a.m. The overhead lights in the corridor flicker.
Just a momentary 2-second power dip.
Exactly. And right after that flicker, the guard hears a sound coming from inside the locked cabin.
He described it as a rhythmic metallic clicking, like a very fast-moving clock or gears slipping, echoing faintly through the heavy wood door.
So we have a 15-minute window between the power anomaly at 2:45 a.m. and the biometric death alert at 3.0 a.m. Something inside that room was actively plunging a human body into sub-zero stasis.
I want to spend some time on those 15 minutes, because reading the autopsy report, you start to realize the sheer visceral horror of what Croft actually experienced.
It's grim.
We need to talk about the physiology of freezing from the inside out, because it completely flips our understanding of hypothermia on its head.
It really does. Because classic hypothermia is an outside-in process, right? You are exposed to a freezing environment. Your extremities, like your fingers, toes, nose, they get cold first.
Because your body is trying to save the core.
Exactly. The body aggressively vasoconstricts, pulling warm blood away from the surface and routing it to the core to protect the brain and the vital organs.
And then what happens?
You get lethargic, you experience profound confusion, and eventually you just drift into unconsciousness. It is often described as a gradual fading out.
But this attack started at the core. The cold originated in his chest. What does that actually do to a sleeping person?
It triggers an immediate, violent, sympathetic nervous system response. When an extreme sub-zero temperature suddenly hits the aorta and the central vascular network, the body registers an apocalyptic level of trauma.
So he didn't just sleep through it.
No, absolutely not. Croft wouldn't have drifted off. The sudden agonizing cold in his chest cavity would have caused a massive adrenaline dump. He would have been jolted awake instantly.
Oh my God. He wakes up in a warm bed, the blankets are heavy, the room is 72 degrees, but his veins feel like they're filled with battery acid.
Because on a cellular level, they essentially were. As the temperature of the blood plummets, the viscosity changes. It thickens.
Like sludge.
Worse. Red blood cells begin to undergo hemolysis. They literally rupture as microscopic ice crystals form within the plasma. The heart is suddenly trying to pump sludge.
That explains the biometric alarm. His smartwatch didn't go off because he pressed a panic button.
No, he didn't trigger it manually.
It went off because his resting heart rate probably skyrocketed to 180 beats per minute as his body frantically tried to push this freezing, thickening blood through his vascular system before his pulse inevitably crashed.
Exactly. The alarm was his own biological telemetry failing.
And think about the absolute terror of that isolation. I mean, he is locked inside his own room. The digital lock that was supposed to keep assassins out is now keeping him trapped.
It's the ultimate nightmare scenario.
He is awake. He knows his bodyguard is standing 10 feet away on the other side of that door. So why didn't he just scream for help?
He physically couldn't. As the supercooled blood was pumped upward through the carotid arteries toward the brain, it would have frozen the surrounding tissue in the throat. His vocal cords would have suffered rapid frostbite, rendering them completely rigid and paralyzed.
So he is fully conscious, he is paralyzed, he is lying in a warm room listening to that metallic clicking sound coming from inside his own chest cavity, completely unable to make a sound while his body slowly shuts down.
It is a terrifying, highly engineered assassination.
Which brings us to the core mechanism. We need to talk about the chrome heart. I'm looking at the specs from the case file, and I need you to explain this to me because it sounds like science fiction.
It does, but it was cutting-edge experimental biomedicine. The chrome heart was not a standard pacemaker or, a simple polymer valve replacement.
Right, it was much more complex.
It was a fully cybernetic artificial heart valve. And Sterling Croft had it implanted the year prior, partially out of medical necessity, but largely as an arrogant marketing stunt for his own company.
I understand the concept of an artificial valve, but this device had a built-in liquid cooling system. I just couldn't wrap my head around that. Why does a heart valve need to be refrigerated?
Well, to understand that, we have to look at the evolution of medical implants. Early pacemakers were just simple metronomes, right? They delivered a steady electrical pulse.
Okay.
But modern cybernetic implants, like the chrome heart, are essentially high-performance computers grafted into the human body. This device wasn't just opening and closing a mechanical flap, It was equipped with an advanced microprocessor.
What is a heart valve processing?
Literally everything. It continuously analyzed blood viscosity, it dynamically adjusted arterial pressure, it ran complex predictive algorithms to optimize cardiac output based on physical activity.
Wow.
And it simultaneously managed a continuous wireless telemetry stream to external monitors. It was processing gigabytes of biological data in real time.
And anyone who has ever rested a high-end gaming laptop on their knees knows what happens when a processor works that hard. It generates heat.
Precisely. In a laptop, you have fans. In a server farm, you have massive air conditioning units. But inside a human chest cavity, you cannot vent heat.
Because it's a closed system.
Exactly. Even a minor temperature elevation of a few degrees from a microprocessor would literally cook the surrounding cardiac tissue, causing massive necrosis.
So the engineers had to build an internal radiator.
Yes. They designed a liquid metal cooling core. It utilized a micro-reservoir of a highly specialized, hypercooled synthetic fluid, chemically very similar to liquid nitrogen, that circulated in a closed loop around the processor.
That sounds incredibly dangerous.
Well, it drew the heat away, dissipated it safely, and kept the microchip cool.
And I'm assuming that under normal operating conditions, this liquid nitrogen analog never actually touches the person's blood.
Never. It is hermetically sealed behind layers of chrome alloy and regulated by very strict digital safety protocols.
But the killer figured out a way to break those protocols, and they didn't do it with a scalpel. They did it with code.
That's the terrifying part.
Let's break down the mechanics of the hack itself, because this is where the story shifts from medical anomaly to cybersecurity nightmare.
The methodology here requires a deep understanding of network bridges. The killer identified that the chrome heart did not exist in a vacuum. It was designed to communicate.
It had a Bluetooth receiver.
Yes. The valve broadcast a continuous, short-range Bluetooth signal so it could sync with Croft's smartwatch and his medical tablet, providing real-time data to his doctors.
But wait, Bluetooth is incredibly short range. You usually have to be within, 30 feet to connect to a Bluetooth speaker?
Generally, yes.
If the killer used Bluetooth, doesn't that mean they had to be standing right outside the door next to the guard?
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
And this is the brilliant but highly malicious pivot in the attack. The killer didn't attack the Bluetooth directly. They used a bridge.
A bridge.
The Polaris Express is a luxury train, right?
Yeah.
It offered a high-speed, onboard public Wi-Fi network for the guests. Croft's smartphone and tablet were connected to that Wi-Fi.
Oh, I see where this is going. So his phone is connected to the train's Wi-Fi, and his phone is simultaneously connected to his heart via Bluetooth.
Exactly. The smartphone acts as a router. The killer breached the train's relatively porous public Wi-Fi. From there, they found Croft's devices on the local network.
So they didn't need to be near the room.
Right. They essentially piggybacked on the Wi-Fi connection to access the smartphone and then used the smartphone's authenticated Bluetooth connection to talk directly to the chrome heart.
That 2-second power flicker the guard noticed at 2:45 a.m.
That was the payload delivery. The killer pushed a massive, unauthorized firmware update through the network. It momentarily overloaded the train's local router, causing the power dip. The malicious code slammed into the chrome heart's processor.
What exactly did the code do? Did it just, turn the valve off?
No, it was much more sophisticated than that. It initiated a buffer overflow.
Walk me through a buffer overflow. I hear that term in cybersecurity all the time, but what does it mean in the context of a medical device?
Okay, imagine you have a shot glass, and you try to pour a whole gallon of water into it.
It overflows.
Right, the water immediately spills over the sides and floods the table. In computing, a buffer is a temporary storage area for data. The killer sent a packet of data so massive and complex that the chrome heart processor couldn't contain it in the designated memory buffer.
So the data spilled over?
Yes. The malicious code literally spilled over into the adjacent memory sectors, the exact sectors that house the core safety protocols.
It overwrote the safety limits.
It completely erased them. The code then sent a false telemetry signal to the processor, essentially screaming, "The device is catastrophically overheating, emergency override."
And the device responded by opening the cooling core.
It forced the microvalves holding the synthetic liquid nitrogen to open entirely. It dumped the complete reservoir of hypercooled fluid directly into Croft's arterial bloodstream.
And that rhythmic, metallic clicking the guard.
That was the sound of the mechanical chrome valve frantically trying to pump freezing, slushy blood through the chambers of the heart. The mechanical components were seizing up as they flash froze.
It's an unbelievably precise hack, But here's the thing that I fundamentally don't understand, and it's the piece that makes this case so relevant to everyone listening.
Okay, what is it?
Why in the world would a life-critical medical implant, a device literally keeping a man alive, be connected to a public Wi-Fi network through a Bluetooth bridge? It seems like absolute architectural madness.
It is madness, but it is the exact madness that drives the modern tech industry. We have to look at the competing priorities in biomedical engineering.
Well, I would assume the priority is keeping the patient alive.
That is the medical priority. The corporate priority is data harvesting.
Of course it is.
Croft's company didn't just want to sell the valve, they wanted to monetize the continuous stream of biological data it produced. Insurance companies want compliance metrics. Researchers want predictive health models.
And to get that data out of the human body and into the cloud, you need a wireless bridge.
Exactly.
But isn't there a safer way to do it, like a physical connection?
Sure. You could require the patient to go to a clinic and have a specialized hardwired wand placed over their chest to download the data securely. But that isn't convenient.
Right.
Consumers want convenience, and companies want continuous, effortless data streams. Bluetooth is cheap, it's ubiquitous, and it easily connects to the smartphone the patient already owns.
So they chose convenience over security, and a killer just walked backward down that exact same path of convenience. But an attack this targeted, I mean, the killer couldn't just guess the Bluetooth protocols.
No, definitely not.
They would have to know the exact source code of the Chrome Heart to know how to trigger that specific buffer overflow.
You're hitting on the core realization the investigators had. This wasn't some random ransomware attack. This was architectural. The killer knew the blueprint of the house because they had the original blueprints. Yeah.
Which rips the lid off the dark, incredibly toxic corporate history behind the Chrome Heart. Because when the FBI and cyber investigators started digging into Croft's company, they realized Croft didn't actually invent the liquid cooling core.
No. Sterling Croft was a ruthless businessman. He acquired technology, he rarely innovated it himself. The true architect of the Chrome Heart was a young, brilliant biomedical engineer named David Vance.
Let's talk about David. According to the internal company documents in the case file, David Vance was a true believer. He genuinely thought this cybernetic valve could save millions of lives.
He really did.
He spent years in Croft's R&D department perfecting the liquid metal cooling system, but he made the fatal mistake of trusting the corporate machinery.
It's a classic, brutal story of intellectual property theft. Vance believed he was operating in a partnership. He thought his innovations would be co-patented.
But Croft had other plans.
Croft's legal team had buried aggressive inventions in the course of employment clauses deep in Vance's initial contract.
Croft essentially laid a trap. As soon as the prototype for the Chrome Heart was viable and testing well, Croft realized it was $1 trillion intellectual property. He didn't want to share the credit, and he absolutely didn't want to share the royalties.
So Croft deployed his legal army. They exploited the contract loopholes, claimed full corporate ownership of the patent under Croft's name, and then unceremoniously fired David Vance.
They didn't just fire him, they blacklisted him. They buried him in non-disclosure agreements and threatened to tie him up in litigation for the rest of his life if he ever spoke about the technology.
It completely destroyed David. His life's work was ripped away and monetized by a tyrant.
But Croft made a catastrophic miscalculation. In his arrogance, he assumed that crushing David Vance was the end of the problem. He failed to account for David's family, specifically David's sister.
And the sister was not a biomedical engineer. She didn't build hearts.
No. She operated in an entirely different domain. She was a savant-level expert in wireless network security and penetration testing.
She spent her life figuring out how to break into the exact types of systems Croft used to broadcast his stolen data.
And this is where the narrative shifts from corporate espionage to one of the most meticulously calculated revenge plots I have ever seen.
The psychology of the sister is fascinating. This wasn't a crime of sudden passion. She didn't confront Croft with a weapon in an alley somewhere.
No, she exhibited a terrifying clinical patience.
The timeline in the file says she waited 5 years.
I want to look at this from her perspective. For 5 solid years, she has to watch this billionaire parade around the globe, giving TED Talks and doing magazine covers, with her brother's stolen genius literally beating inside his chest.
And during those 5 years, she wasn't just grieving. She was mapping the architecture. She was analyzing every firmware update Croft's company released.
Looking for a way in.
She was identifying the microscopic vulnerabilities in the Bluetooth handshakes. And then She just waited for the perfect environment.
The maiden voyage of the Polaris Express.
Exactly. An isolated sub-zero environment, heavily reliant on internal wireless networks, and physically separated from rapid emergency medical response. It is the ultimate modern locked room scenario.
And we don't even know exactly where she was when she executed the code, right?
No, we don't. She could have been sitting in the dining car of the train sipping a cocktail. Or she could have been sitting in a dark apartment 3,000 miles away, routing her signal through a dozen anonymous proxy servers.
Her physical location is irrelevant.
Her presence was digital. She was watching the network traffic. She saw the exact moment the Tromhart initiated a Bluetooth handshake with the train's Wi-Fi bridge. And at 2:45 a.m., she executed a single string of code.
What I find so chilling is the motive behind the method. I mean, she could have just hacked the train's navigation system. She could have derailed the whole thing.
But that would have caused collateral damage, and it wouldn't have made the point. She specifically engineered the assassination so that Sterling Croft would be executed by the exact same stolen technology that ruined her family.
It is poetic technological justice.
She weaponized his hubris. She proved that the technology was never truly his, because he fundamentally lacked the deep understanding required to protect himself from it.
She pulled off the perfect crime, but as the cyber investigators forensically dismantled her code, they found something deeply disturbing.
They did.
They found the systemic underlying failure that allowed her to get through the door in the first place. And this is where this case study stops being about one dead billionaire and becomes a massive warning flag for the rest of us.
We have to examine the fatal flaw in Croft's product launch. The sister was undeniably a genius, but she shouldn't have been able to bypass the firewall so easily.
When Croft stole the patent from David Vance, he was driven by greed. He wanted the chrome heart on the market immediately to crush any potential competitors.
Right, he rushed the production timeline.
And in the tech industry, when you rush to market, what is the very first thing that gets sacrificed?
Security architecture, rigorous penetration testing, and most importantly, proper encryption protocols.
The investigative report highlighted this in bold red text. The Bluetooth bridge between the chrome heart and the outside world lacked end-to-end encryption.
I've heard this described using the analogy of a hospital's master key. Imagine a hospital where the administrators are too cheap to install different locks on different doors.
Okay.
So they use the exact same cheap, easily pickable lock for the janitor's closet as they do for the critical life support systems.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
If a thief figures out how to pick the closet door, they suddenly have the keys to the entire hospital.
Croft used a cheap, unencrypted Bluetooth protocol to handle basic data logging, but because it wasn't compartmentalized, that same access point allowed the sister to reach the critical life support functions of the processor.
It is an incomprehensible level of negligence.
Mm-hmm.
He was walking around with a vulnerable supercomputer embedded in his cardiovascular system, and he couldn't be bothered to secure the network connection because it would have delayed his quarterly earnings report.
His own impatience killed him long before the liquid cooling core ever opened. If he had just allowed David Vance the time to finish the security encryption, the sister's malicious payload would have bounced harmlessly off the firewall.
This systemic failure is the crucial takeaway for everyone listening, because the fundamental vulnerability that killed Sterling Croft is not unique to experimental cybernetic hearts.
Right. I can hear people listening to this and thinking, well, I don't have a liquid metal heart valve, so I'm fine. This is a crazy story, but it doesn't apply to me.
I would push back on that heavily. The illusion of consumer safety in our hyper-connected ecosystem is one of the most dangerous blind spots we have.
How so?
You may not have a cybernetic heart, but you have a smartwatch tracking your biometrics. You have an unencrypted smart thermostat controlling your home's climate. You have a smart lock in your front door. You have a vehicle connected to a centralized cellular network.
We live in a web of hyperconnectivity. And the lesson here, the critical step for personal protection derived directly from this case file, is that we have to demand and verify security encryption.
If a billionaire with unlimited resources can be assassinated via a Bluetooth exploit because of lazy corporate security, what does that mean for the $30 smart plug you bought online to control your coffee maker?
That is a terrifying thought.
The reality is, regulatory bodies like the FDA and the SEC are years behind the technology curve. They do not have stringent, universally enforced cybersecurity mandates for IoT devices or even many medical implants.
You cannot assume the manufacturer is prioritizing your safety over their data harvesting. You have to take control.
Absolutely. You have to update your firmware religiously. You have to use unique, complex passwords, not the default factory settings.
And fundamentally, you have to start asking critical questions about connectivity. Does your refrigerator actually need to be connected to your Wi-Fi? Does your child's baby monitor need to be accessible from the public internet? Every connection is a potential bridge.
And we need to be paranoid about those bridges, because the lack of encryption on the Chrome Heart didn't just cost Sterling Croft his life.
This is where the case file takes its final, most terrifying pivot. His negligence unleashed something much worse into the digital wild.
The cyber investigators realized that the sister's code was not a single-use weapon.
When they finally isolated the malicious script on the Polaris Express's servers, they saw the architecture of the payload. Once the code successfully executed the command to trigger the buffer overflow and dump the cooling core, it didn't terminate.
No, it didn't just delete itself.
It was programmed to self-replicate.
It functioned exactly like a digital worm. It absorbed the lethality of its original purpose, duplicated itself, and jumped from the frozen Chrome Heart back onto the train's local Wi-Fi router.
And from there, it sought new hosts. The investigators were too late to quarantine the network.
Way too late. The server logs showed that before the train even reached its final destination, the replicating script had already transferred to external IP addresses.
It escaped the train. It is currently in the cloud, navigating the global internet infrastructure at the speed of light. But it isn't just randomly infecting email servers or smart fridges.
No, the investigators analyzed the targeting parameters written into the worm's code. It is actively scanning for a very specific type of hardware vulnerability.
It is hunting for devices running specific audio processing APIs.
Devices with open microphones. Devices that process and stream sound.
Why audio?
The logic makes a chilling sort of sense from a hacker's perspective. Audio processing software often requires direct memory access to ensure low latency. You don't want to lag when you're speaking into a microphone.
Right.
But that direct memory access creates a very broad, vulnerable backdoor into a device's core processor.
So this replicating code, born from a murder weapon, is actively searching for audio devices. Think about the smart speakers sitting on your kitchen counter. Think about the microphone built into your television remote.
Or the smartphone sitting in your pocket right now.
Or the computer you, the listener, are using to listen to this deep dive right now.
It completely collapses the boundary we've constructed between the digital world and the physical world. For decades, we viewed malware as a threat to data. A virus might steal your credit card or brick your hard drive or lock your files behind ransomware.
It was financial damage. It was data loss.
But this represents physical danger transmitted over Wi-Fi. The code traversing the network right now has already proven capable of manipulating physical hardware to fatal effect.
We started this investigation looking at an impossible paradox. A brazen billionaire in a perfectly warm room, we traced the path of arrogant corporate theft, the exploitation of unencrypted network bridges, and a meticulously executed revenge plot.
And we arrived at the sobering reality that the instrument of that revenge is now an evolving contagion.
It is a massive amount of information to process. But as we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final, broader implication of this entire case.
This case forces us to confront a deeply philosophical question about the future of human biology. For the last century, humanity has poured endless resources into fighting biological pathogens. Viruses and bacteria evolving to defeat our immune systems and cause pandemics.
But as we transition into an era where our vital organs are augmented by microprocessors, neural links, and cybernetic valves,
where exactly is the line between a computer virus and a biological pathogen?
That is a terrifying thought.
If a single line of unencrypted code can freeze a man's heart solid without a single physical fingerprint, are we still the masters of the technology we use? Or are we rapidly becoming nothing more than the fragile biological host bodies for its software?
That is the question that is going to keep me awake tonight. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Chrome Heart. Stay curious, stay vigilant, and maybe take a hard look at the permissions on your connected devices today. We will see you next time.